Hey, we're going to get started in just a second. I just have to let people know that I'm going to be live and that I'm taking my lunch. Just have to let people know that I'm going to be live and that I'm taking my lunch. Just have to let people know that I'm going to be live and that I'm taking my lunch. Just have to let people know that I'm going to be live and that I'm taking my lunch.
Okay, cool. So today,
just have to let people know that I'm going to be live.
I just want to show you and kind of guide you through. Not even really do this necessarily for you, but I have some course material that I'm working on. I just finished React Holiday at react.holiday, and I wanted to kind of continue that theme of what we were working on. Now, we covered a lot of kind of more like basic stuff. So we covered like, arrays and kind of components and all that kind of stuff, composition, the good stuff. But we didn't get into modularization, which is something that I really wanted to cover and didn't get a chance to. So I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing that now. I haven't created this material, but I kind of have this like notion right now that what I want to do is write it as a blog post first of maybe 5 things, maybe the first 5 things that you need to know about like modularization and React. I have a list somewhere, I've lost it, which kind of reduces it to about 10 things that you would need to know. And like 5 of them are kind of, normal. And then 5 are more like advanced type things, like if you're doing a library or whatnot. So I thought I'd kind of start on that work today. I'd start it as a blog post with these 5 things that you should know about modules in React, and then kind of, go from there in terms of actually creating it into videos and course material. So let's dive in. I'm working with, I know a lot of people ask me about kind of like my streaming setup and whatnot. And so I'm working right now for the first time with my ATEM Mini Pro ISO. And so I'll be doing all the switching and stuff with that. I think I can even put a little heads up here. It's pretty cool. So yeah, the chat is live. So if you're hanging out with me today, feel free to toss a question in or do whatever you want to do. And I will try to get to those. But for right now, it's just going to be, a little bit of me working, looking at documentation, kind of seeing how to make this content work. So first things first, since I do want to make this as a kind of a blog post eventually, I'm going to create a new file. This is my chan.dev site. And we'll just make it really obvious that this is a placeholder. And just say React and modules. This title sucks, but it shouldn't be that title for long. Now, if I was smart, I'd have a snippet for creating these kinds of things, but I end up copy pasting these always, the front matter from one post to another. So let's do that. What's up, Michael G? Good to see you. So this is my site. It's done in 11D. I dig it. 11D's sweet. Love just being able to write Markdown for these posts and have them show up. So placeholder, React and modules. Got to change this date for it to show up. So that'll be 21/01/04. Is that today? Yeah, because I've been dreading the 4th and having to go back to work for a couple days now. And yeah, so let's start. Let's go. Perfect. Actually, let's make this even more obvious. I don't know if I can put this array syntax in this YAML. Looks like maybe not. I think I need to wrap that in strings. There we go. Okay, cool. So usually my first approach for anything like this, excuse me just a second. My first place for this, yeah, we did an 11D group session in our Discord, and it was super awesome. The YouTube account where we are posting some of those events doesn't have a URL yet, but I think, let me grab it real quick. Let me see if I can find it. I'm gonna have to post it later, I think. But there is a session where we just kind of like dive into 11D. Ben Myers does a great job kind of doing like a ground up 11D 11D introduction. So we got this. One of my favorite places to go for kind of web developer, particularly JavaScript information is, let's see, modules, MDN. I usually just Google for it, so I don't even know. I guess it's developers.mozilla.org. I think this is really great kind of like starting resource for anything that you might have like general questions on. I think that the writing is pretty good. It's pretty approachable. So let's see, we're going to search it for modules. JavaScript core modules. Let me see. There's a page that I know that I'm looking for. I think it might be this one. Yeah. Where it covers all of the different import syntaxes that you would need to know. And I think that this is a fairly this is a pretty good kind of a pretty thorough example, I think, of all of the like pretty normal use cases you would see for using modules. And then the cool thing about modules is that this export, everything that we have on this import side is going to have a corresponding export as well. So I have a code sandbox in which we'll kind of explore some of those things. I'm going to copy and paste this right now and put that into my post. Put some backticks around this. Looks like my code highlighting is not working. I think it's because I didn't actually incorporate it into my my theme. Yeah. I'm not sure about that. So this I might have to do it a different time. So I'll have to fix that later. Now, if you use the blog starter for 11D, which I have done, you can actually go, and I think it's style guide. Okay, I know it's in here somewhere. So we're going to open up. There's like a free style guide that gets kind of put like built into the app, which is really neat. I'm missing it somehow. Posts. Well, whatever. Feed notes. Okay. Another time. Okay. So what are the things that we want to cover? So in this first one, I want to cover, there's a lot of kind of more advanced things that you can do with modules. And I think that these apply mostly to library authors or people who are working on some type of like internalized system. The things that are going to be most important. So I'm going to separate this into two lists. Default export is going to be critical, obviously. This, I don't actually know what we call this, but like this idea of taking it, I think it's a module object, where you take a module and then kind of all of the named exports get reduced into a single object. So we'll definitely do that syntax. The export, so the just taking the named exports, aliasing named exports. Something that we'll need to consider is how you can also alias the default export. Actually, no, it's already aliased, so never mind. Oh, that's what's happening here. Import star as, where we're naming the local object. So, okay, so we have that. We're naming that. This I kind of see as an extension of that. So, importing, let's see, move my face over here. So importing multiple named exports. Let's see, I'm going to call this, is there yeah, there we go. So I'm going to default import module object named import. I think, I don't know if this is a separate thing, but I'm going to separate it out because we can always merge it back together. I mean, we can always separate it out too, but keeping them separate will help me kind of identify the patterns a little bit. So we're going to have like a named and aliased. This one I don't think is super important for what we're going to be doing. It might be, just because there are some packages in React that you can actually reach into specifically that aren't exported. So maybe, I don't know. So we're going to import from path. This is more or less this. I think, as far as I can tell, it's just demonstrating that you can import this kind of as named, but then import this other thing as something else. I don't know. This is important, I think. So default import plus named. And it might also be worth covering the syntax. I should like lift my screen up or something like that. I'm seeing my face and I'm just kind of like grimacing, looking down. I look like I don't know, just like an old fart. Old fart. When was the last time you heard old fart? Only on this stream. Okay, cool. So we got that going on. Let's see what else we have. So that's important. I think default export plus. So these are all examples of similar things. Now, the export side of things is actually where things get interesting. So I'm going to go back over here. Wait, I don't want to abort this just yet. I have a tendency to kind of bounce around a little too quickly. So these are like kind of like advanced combinations, maybe. Let's do that. This, though, is actually a discrete concept that we'd want to cover, which is the import. So this will have global effects. So anything that you want to import that is like, I don't know, you see this a lot with like CSS in, Create React app and whatnot, where you're going to import this thing and it's just going to import the CSS, and this all depends on Babel in this particular case, but it's just going to import some like global that theoretically like automatically executes. So we can come up with an example for that. And then the dynamic import is a pretty distinct one. Okay, cool. So a question I have at this point is like how I want to like represent this content. Like, is it going to be, um, is the goal to show both pieces of it at the same time to kind of show the side on the export side and the import side? I do feel like that's the way that I think about them, and probably the most helpful is thinking about how these things work in tandem. Because there is a level of parity, like an important parity between them. So I don't know. Let's see. Nope. Need the localhost version. Okay, so I have all that stuff in there. These are as comments. I should have probably done those as headings, but we'll get to that. Okay, so there's going to be an export page as well. I want to see if there's... Okay, cool. So this is actually organized significantly differently. So let's add... Now, given that I want to tackle these things, these concepts together, I think I'll just make 2 sections for now to organize my thoughts, and I can pick, I guess, from the most important ones. But this I'm going to show you the one section that I think is important strictly for export. So let's see. So we have import. We'll do another section for export. I'm going to grab these. Interesting. There are 2 types of exports. Named exports, 0 or more exports per module. Default exports, 1 per module. That's an interesting, it's a good little snippet. Okay, so I copied all this over, and I'm just going to go through piece by piece all of the pieces of it. So let's see. So we have exporting module features. So this is just kind of like the literal part of it where we're saying like export, you know, like let const function, etc. We can do an assignment. So these can be, what is this? Nothing at all? Yeah, so these are exporting just the identifier. So you can export just the identifier. I assume this would be undefined theoretically. But then also you can export the kind of with the value as well. Interesting that you can do them all in one assignment like this, which is kind of cool. I don't know if that's like super important to know, but you know, cool nonetheless. Export function, export class. Okay, cool. So anytime we use this export keyword, we can import it on the other side. Now it is interesting because there's like a little bit of a disconnect, right? Because on the import side, like we're importing something, you're importing it via the curly braces, right? Like it's not, but it's like destructuring it off of a module, or yeah, it's like destructuring it, but it's a module, not an object. Of course, unless you turn it to a module object and then you can destructure them from the module object. So confusing. But where it gets kind of interesting is there's this like hybrid syntax. So if you want to import and export from the same module, or import and export at the same time in a module, there's this syntax for that, which is the kind of export, I guess they call it export list. So the kind of alternative of this, actually, let me put this below. Kind of the long form of this would be to like import name1. Oh wait, export list. Maybe this is exactly what I'm talking about. So you could export, if I use the export key, I can export these like this. Okay, so I'm learning here. So export list looks like doing this using a similar syntax on the export and import side. So this is good to know. See, I learned. Look at me. This is what I, okay, so we can also do like an export as, which is really important. Renaming exports. Exporting destructured assignments with renaming. Interesting. Very cool. Export default expression. So these are all the export defaults that you can do. It's really similar to above. I think this was the thing that I thought I was on when I was up here. But this is the thing that's kind of unique to export that import is kind of indifferent to, which is this aggregate modules, which is you can import star from, and so that's going to import all of the modules. It's not the default export. I think that's going to import all of the modules or all of the exports from a certain file as like local variables. We're going to have to play with that because I'm not sure. I don't actually use this one. So, this one's draft for 2021. So we're not going to touch that because I don't want to touch any draft stuff. Such a pain in the ass to update that. And then export. Now this is cool because you can actually in one go import and export. So you're going to export these named exports not from this module but from another module, which is really neat. That is the feature that I think is probably best used for like libraries and whatnot. One of the reasons is because something that I end up doing a lot is like we might create some kind of wrapper around another library. One of these examples is Reach UI, right? Reach UI has a ton of componentry inside of it, and then we'll augment certain parts of that componentry just to have maybe a class name or certain like different default style or whatnot. And what we'll do is we'll kind of, to make things easy, instead of having to use both, kind of know where the boundaries of like where our thing is and where Reach's thing is, we'll just expose an API that you're supposed to use. And what we'll do is we'll import all of the rest of the pieces from Reach, so you can kind of lean on their documentation a bit, but then also kind of munge in the parts of it that we've like reworked subtly. So I love this, super critical for kind of shared library type work. And then this just kind of like goes on to show the renaming and whatnot. So the question that I have at this point is like, which parts, of this are most important for React devs? Well, surely we're going to have to talk about default export. And I'm curious to learn here kind of what your experience is, but my experience is that people naturally reach for default export. There's a ton of ESLint rules that kind of drive you to this. A lot of people feel like it's a best practice. I think because it keeps modules small and therefore like more legible. Oh yeah. So Matt's saying how kind of I should cover how these work with Webpack rollup, etc., and tree shaking. Yes, I'll be learning a lot there myself, actually. So I think it's that's important to note as well. Jacob Roman, hey, what's up? Good to see you. So yeah, the default export. I think this feels like the most like common thing that I see. So I think this is going to be something that we'll have. This will probably be our starting point, I think. And I think that we'll probably just do this with a component of our own. I think we might use like React itself as an illustration. because I want it to be like kind of virtuous, like where things that you've done with React. Let me just put like an example here. So like I think a lot of people have probably done something like this: import React. I think they changed things up a little bit. Star as React from, well, let me just do what people used to do. React, and then you use a comma, and then you might use state, pull like just that named export out. Now you've always been able to use it through the the default export or the module, react.use state. But a lot of people are familiar with this. So, oh my gosh, let me show you a trick. I just learned this. This is so cool. So command comma. Oh no. Oh, sorry. No. Option comma. Option comma is a proper ellipsis. I'm so used to doing ... or doing the thing to bring up my like emoji picture and then picker and then typing ellipsis and then going down here and doing that. But I learned on accident, literally just like an accidental keystroke. It was option comma and it adds that. Love it. Love it. Love it so much. So which parts of this are most important for React devs? Okay, so the default export is going to be like our kind of like baseline. And then let me kind of open up a code sandbox for this. New code sandbox. Just because it can be helpful for me to see kind of like what the eventual code might look like. Okay, gonna take a second to spin up. So it looks something like let's start from the outside in. Okay, so we want to have some type of illustration of a default export. So this will be import. Oh, sorry. Yes, Roger. You're right. I said option comma. That is incorrect. It's option semicolon. I keep forgetting because I use Dvorak, and so for me it's option. It looks like option Z, but yes, option semicolon for that tilde. Thank you for the correction, Roger. Appreciate it. Okay, cool. So we're gonna have a default export, which is gonna be my default import from okay, so let's make that real quick. Default import.js. And then I think that because, most of the content that's on my site right now, yes, this is all falling under this bucket of kind of like everything but the React, where we talk about all of the kind of tangential things around React. So I am going to focus on React, even though modules are not exclusive to React. I do hope that we kind of cover some of that in the more like advanced thing, showing how, like I might use how I use modularization to kind of export context and like reducer functions that work with that context, etc. So I'm going to focus on React right now, even though it's not limited to. And then hopefully in this second bucket of like advanced modules, we'll kind of get more into the kind of how you would expose the pieces of any type of like React componentry to, which might be functions or globals or constants or whatever. So my default import. Yeah. Let's define that. So export default Function is a declaration, so we don't have to do the equals dance. Return my default component export. Okay, we're going to keep this just as simple as possible to really make the implementation shine. So default export, we got that. We're not using it, so that's why it's still showing up kind of funny here. React is not defined. Import stars, React from React. I was under the impression that we didn't have to do that anymore. Interesting. Okay, cool. So that's one. That's the first thing. I think that's the like kind of the most important thing. I think that we'll probably go into maybe a separate example. So we'll create a new file again, and we'll do this for named export. So I think separating these is probably going to be the most clear at this point, and then we'll get into kind of mixing and matching. So kind of feeling like I should change these to component. Yeah, sure. It gets so hairy with the like import export name and like what side of it you're on. Okay, so we're gonna call this I don't like the numbers. Because you just don't ever see that in real code. Okay, let's use those. Named export, my other named export, and then create a new file. Let's copy this, just get a little head start. Now the important bit here is that, now this brings up a really interesting point. So export named export, which I'll express in just a second. I forgot what I named these. My named export, my other named export. Okay, my default. Okay, so this is complaining about something that I changed. My default. Okay, I'm going to, instead of forcing you to go through the pain of me feeling my feelings on some of these naming things, I'm just going to go with it and then kind of clean that up a little bit later. Named export. Those match. I must have done something else incorrect. Oh, I'm importing them from the wrong file. Copy paste fails all over the place. I'm going to call this named exports, which I already did. Named imports. Oh, wow. Look at all this nonsense. Fix that. Imports. It's kind of like that syntax where you can import and export at the same time. Maybe, imports would have been a good name for that, actually. Okay, named exports. Only one. I did something stupid. Default export, named exports. Oh, because I have the default keyword on here. Can't have that. And then just rename this file. I do feel like renaming things is like the hardest part of coding. It's like as you progress through like your understanding of whatever you're working in, it's like the names change and then you got to rename everything in like 20 places. It's the worst. Okay, what's it complaining about now? So it doesn't have an element. Usually what I do here is I'll just, because I have 3 things that could possibly be going wrong, I try to just split that up and see what my issue is. So it doesn't like my named exports. My named, not my name. Thank you. Thank you. My named export. No, and Roger, I love the backseat comments. I mean, I could be staring at this thing for hours, so I appreciate you chiming in. You saved me like 15 minutes of everybody's time, and my own, which I value highly. So thank you. Okay, cool. So all of those came in. So what we have now is we have an example of default export, named export, or named import. I'm gonna have to decide. This is definitely going to be a question that I need to. Do I go with import, export, import, and export as I'm talking about these things? Because it is a challenging part of trying to do both of them at the same time. So I don't know. I'll have to flesh that out as we go on. Okay, so these are the 2 main things. I kind of like my gut feeling is the next question, and I always try to go by like I try to go into like whatever the next lesson is going to be like whatever the tension is. And I feel like the tension here is that we have the default export, and then we have these named exports. What if I want to do both? So I think that would naturally be my next curiosity. So like default and named export. And this actually gets into some really interesting pieces of React and how I export a lot of my code. And an area where these things kind of like start to converge a little bit. And I'm kind of feeling like maybe this is some type of progressive type of lessoning, where we start with the default export, we add some named exports, or maybe we convert them to named exports, and then we kind of, then we export both and show how we access those. Because at this point, there's actually a number of ways that we can do this. And so I want to get in there. I still like that it's separated for now. Hey, Happy New Year, Marcus. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. So far, it's a good one. I'm streaming today, which is fun. I feel like I have the most motivation at the beginning of the year to stream. But hopefully this persists. I'd like to do more of this. I really enjoy it. And let me know what you think. I think sometimes I'm afraid of like having to like provide a lot of value in like streams and like actually know what I'm doing. But I'm trying out these more kind of unstructured learning types of times. So yeah. Oh yeah, dude, Marcus. If you want to hang out with us, Discord's the place to be, man. And sorry, I assumed man, but Discord's the place to be. We have a lot of fun there. We talk a lot, so I'd love to get to know you a little bit better. So dive in. Actually, let me paste a link. I'm gonna do it right now. It'll take just a second. Well, maybe not quite just a second. Invite people. I'm just gonna, in order to make it as fast as possible, I'm just gonna copy the one that expires in a day. So, but it shouldn't take you a whole day to join. Cool. So there's a link, and yeah, would love to see you there. We're hanging out there all the time. A lot of us are trying to figure out how to kind of level up our own content game. We've been kind of exploring with building 11D stuff together. There's a lot of fun stuff happening there, so really encourage you to join and check it out. So like Jacob Roman and I did kind of a code challenge that he went through the other day. I don't have a link to the YouTube channel directly because it doesn't have a fancy one yet. But I'll share those in Discord. You can find them there. Yeah, so let's see. So I think that kind of from the outside, what I want to do is a couple of things. And honestly, I don't even know if one of these is possible. So I'll be finding out right now. So one of those is going to be doing both the default and the named. An alternative approach is to, whoops. Come on. So an alternative approach, which I often use, I really like, is star as, my module object, I guess is what it would be called. And then from there, sorry, let me comment this out. From there, you would do like my module object dot. You can do default. You can do, I guess that would look more like this. And then use that property access syntax. Getting these examples up kind of helps me like kind of flesh out what would be the better side to like name these things from. My other named export. Okay, cool. Yeah, so like this is what that would look like from that side of things. So let me comment that out. Another option, I don't know if this actually works, so we'll figure this out, but where we do the star as, and then it looks like maybe it doesn't like that. These names get really terrible really fast. Definitely don't use any of this as like a suggestion for naming. Hey Ben, what's up? Good to see you. So yeah, you know what? I'm gonna move this since we've kind of like moved away from the blog post side of it to flesh out some of these examples. So yeah, so star as mixed import. So this is a big question that I have. Because I'm curious about it because I know that React has historically done some kind of, I don't know, has historically made it possible to access React as an object like this without having to do the star as thing. And I think it changed recently. And so I think a lot of people are going to maybe wonder if they can just change their import React, and then kind of all of this stuff that they might have. If they can just go through and transform that to as like that, which I am also curious about, and because that would be maybe a nice way to do it. Yeah, Marcus, you're in the right place, the right time. Yeah, and it's kind of funny because I feel like this is definitely like the slow side of this content, and then hopefully, I mean, my goal is that kind of by the end of this process, it would basically just be like 15 minutes of content that you could just be like, okay, cool. I'm gonna watch these videos. I'm gonna play around with the demos, and then 15 minutes later, I'm like a total master of modules. But it takes a while to get there, doesn't it? Okay, so let's try this. About, I don't know, 14 minutes left. So why don't we try this, see how far we get, or see if we can get it to work, if it is an option, and we'll do that. Okay, cool. So star, this terrible name, star as mixed exports.js. Great. And so what that's going to look like is we'll have so I'll have an export default function. Turn this is going to be just fast and loose. So if you have any questions, hit me up. So we're going to do that. We're going to have a export. This is not going to be default. We can only have one default. This will be first named. I mean, there's no notion of first. It's not like an array. It's not ordered. So let's just do a named. Another named. Now, something that's going to be important, and I'm going to add a note to this, is the value of naming all exports. That's something that we really want to cover because, let's see. Now, one of the reasons it's so important to do this, so right now we can just export an anonymous function as default. It doesn't need a name because there's only one default, and so you can get away with that. However, this does kind of throw like the Chrome dev tools or the React dev tools in Chrome don't really know how to like do this, and so the messages that you get are not very helpful. Because it'll just be like anonymous, functions. So if you get like an error, you get, notes or, whatever, not super helpful. So it's always helpful to, and you can kind of name this whatever you want. I kind of like to name it at least in some way to have some parity with the kind of like name of the file. Can be in any pattern, but I don't know. You'll work it out. But like, so in this case, I might do something like star as mixed. I don't know. Or I guess I'm adding export in there. Star as mixed exports. So just because that's what the file's named. So typically what this would look like is maybe you have a drop down component and it's all composed at the end, and you can like import as default and give it a couple props, and you have a fully functioning drop down. But you also have some of those pieces that you can export to recompose those. I would still want this to be, have the name of like, drop down or whatever it is. So anyway, food for thought. Let's see. I'm going to jump back over to chat real quick. Yeah, I agree with you, Marcus. React and Rust definitely seem to be hot right now. Oh yeah. Yeah, we're gonna get you there. We're gonna get you there, Marcus. You're gonna, I swear, like in a month, you'll be like, React, no problem, easy. Okay, cool. So we got everything that we need now. We have the default export, which I want to explore. We have 2 named exports. So now let's jump back over to this side of things and see if we can do everything that I wanted to do. So we're importing from start as mixed exports. I think that file exists correctly. We just need to change some of these names. So I believe I did a named and then another named. Again, these abstract names are terrible. Definitely going to come up with something more concrete. I'm curious, like, what you think for these kinds of examples. Do you like to just see like something that's kind of like on brand, like we come up with some type of project that we're maybe extracting components from and do it that way, or is it more helpful to have it a little less concrete, more abstract? Definitely interested to know what you think there, because I think that we could sometimes having the concretion of maybe like a to-do list or whatnot is helpful in kind of providing the frame for like, this doesn't have a magic name. I'm giving it the name of like to-do list. But then it's also not like something totally like kind of like absolutely abstracted. So curious your thoughts there. Let's see. So, and then I think what we're going to do here, I'm going to call this the default, just to show that it's not, that we're not grabbing this one by name. We're actually pulling it off, just that default function off. Could not find module path star as mixed exports. I'll try this again. Star as mixed. Oh, mix. Well. Okay, cool. Let me hide these. Can I put this to the side? Oh, no. I just made another one. No, don't leave. Just close. Save. Close. No! Oh, crap. Well, at least you put it to the side. That's nice. Okay, so Marcus says real world examples. I think that that's probably a good place. And I think, something like a to-do list would give us enough components without being, too big an app to do that. So I like the idea of maybe having some kind of starter, super simple one, and then extracting components. I think that could be a good place to do it. A good way to do it. Okay, cool. So let's render out the defaults. React is not defined again. I did that same stupid thing. Import or as React from React. Okay, cool. Okay, so that works as is. So now let's play around with some of the other syntaxes that we have for doing this. So we got that. We're going to do import, what is it, star as the default. Nope. So star as mixed exports. So terrible. Okay. Ooh, exports. Okay. Now this is not a component, so we're going to take this. Naming things is hard indeed. Now we're going to get an error because this isn't a component, but we can use property access syntax. I think to call default, if I spell it right. Yes. Okay, cool. So what we did was we took this entire module, this entire module as a local object. So we kind of like objectify the module. And then now we can access all these things through property access syntax. So I can now do the a named and another named. Okay, cool. I should have probably made these divs for the sake of example, but I didn't. Okay, cool. Now the question here is, can I also, using this kind of like module to object syntax, can I also take the named exports off of this thing? So a named and another named. Looks like maybe not. I'm getting unexpected token. I don't think it likes this. So that one is off the table. Unless I'm misinterpreting this error, but I'm pretty sure that if we just did this now and removed this, it would work. Oh, sorry, I got to remove the prefixes. Okay, and it does. Okay, so there is no, okay, so I want to make a note of that. There's no import star as local object plus named syntax as of right now. Which I think is probably important to know. I think I've tried that before and was like sorely disappointed. So good to know. So that means we'll go from this syntax to, so Roger is asking, can and should you export the same function twice in the same file, both as named and as default? That's a really good question, and I think that it kind of depends on what you're after. I'm going to jump over to this really quick. So I don't have time for a lengthy example, but I will show you kind of the way that I tend to use the default and the named exports in my code. So I tend to think of the default export as like the fully composed version of that thing. So it's hard to think of a good example right now, but okay, just to, I mean, since we were kind of talking about to-do lists anyway, why don't we go through something like that? So let's call this, or let's make a new module. I'm afraid that I'm going to run into just some irritating things. So let's call this to-do list.js. Export default to-do list function. And then I just got a message, so I'm going to have to leave in just a little bit. Okay, so we have this thing, we export it as default. It's a fully kind of like composed component. Let's make this even like kind of, let's take it even a step further. Let's kind of add some other things to it as well. Let's add our header. So I have my to-do list, et cetera, et cetera. So we have this and like people start using this, but maybe they want to like use a different header with it, right? And so we might start pulling out the pieces of that so that they can recompose different options for themselves, but still using some of the kind of thing, like kind of the conveniences. So like, let's say maybe this has, class name, my to-do list or whatever. And so we want to like still expose all of those like individual parts. So what I like to do is like have the kind of like, plug and play drop down or drop in version of it as default, and then start exporting some of the pieces of that that are helpful. So like maybe now we have our heading, we'll componentize that. Export. I'm doing this wrong. Function. So now we can do that. So we're using, so we have this whole thing, right, as our default. So someone can just like import the list. It doesn't change from what they had before. And again, we'll do like a class name here just to kind of show that it's doing something kind of unique. Now it doesn't change from before, right? But someone can kind of like compose, like kind of take that piece and compose it in a different way. Same with this. So we can call this, list, and then spit that out like so. Okay, so now we have this default export, and it's doing a lot of work for us, right? It's still providing that like kind of one like import as the default, use it, but then all of the guts of it can be like kind of individually recomposed. If someone's like, okay, well, I want to use this list, but I only want the list, I don't want the heading, right? So they can just use the named export for the list and use that without the heading. Conversely, they could take the heading and use a different type of list. And so that's how I like to do it. Not everybody kind of, maybe agrees with me. Some people prefer like a folder structured kind of way for organizing this. But I feel like this is kind of the sweet spot for components and whatnot. Unfortunately, we are at the end of my time. I do thank you for being here. I'm glad that you were here to hang out. Roger, Marcus, Ben, who else was in here? Jacob, Michael, Matt. It was good to hang out with you all. I appreciate your feedback on this. I'm really excited to kind of continue to turn this into course material. I think the things that I learned today is that having some kind of starter app that's not modularized and modularizing it is probably going to be a really good place to start. So I think that that'll be good. And yeah, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I really appreciate it. And again, this is all in the service of eventually getting this as a module React course on lunch.dev. So if you're not in Discord, hit the link that I posted in there. And yeah, good hanging out with you. We'll do more of these. Happy New Year. See you soon.